Hello, Paul here, and we're still here at Hack Green this week for the Soviet threat event where we're here performing our Cuban Missile Crisis show. And today I'm going to talk to you about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the closest the world has ever come to an actual nuclear war. And the Russian man who stopped that happening. Now, before I talk about him, I'd just like to set a bit of the scene with the Cuban Missile Crisis. It occurs in October of 1962, and it starts with the Soviet Union placing nuclear missiles 90 miles from the Florida coastline on the island of Cuba. Kennedy responds with deploying a naval blockade to block any Soviet ships coming into Cuban waters. Technically, an act of war. What this then triggers is a process where the two world's greatest superpowers are hurtling towards a nuclear confrontation. They start off as if they were playing chess, it ends as if they were just rolling dice, and the world held its breath. Now, on what we call Black Saturday, which is October the 27th, 1962, the blockade, things come to a head at the blockade when they've been playing cat and mouse for several days with several Soviet subs, and USS Beale has got one. Now, the standing anti-submarine warfare methods that they would use in order to bring a Soviet submarine up to the surface unharmed would be to drop hand grenades over the side, and that's a whump, low thud, would signal to that Soviet submarine that the Americans know you are there. The game is up. We are dropping grenades. This is to let you know we are not dropping depth charges, but we could drop depth charges. They can also use signal depth charges, which slightly louder do much the same thing. And this, in typical fashion, is what USS Beale starts to do. Unfortunately, B-59, that is some feet below them under the water, has been out of radio contact with Moscow for 48 hours. They do not know what is actually happening in the Cuban Missile Crisis at this particular time. And they wait, and then they hear the first thud, the thud, the thud. Now, as I've mentioned, this is a standard anti-submarine tactic that the Americans use. And the Soviets in Moscow know this, but nobody has told their subcrews during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But carry on, thud, thud, and still B-59 isn't moving. So they start to drop signal depth charges. That thud becomes a wham, wham, wham. The crew of B-59 are terrified. They're also in a very stifling, enclosed, claustrophobic environment. The air conditioning system in that submarine has broken down. It is a steamy, wet heat of about 40 degrees Celsius in that submarine. It is absolutely unbearable. And then with a sudden wham of a signal depth charge, that one was close. The war must have started. So in response, that Soviet crew get together to arm and fire a 15 kiloton nuclear torpedo. That sub's last line of defence. If they are going to go down, they are going to take the US Atlantic Fleet with them. Now, normally, this would require the unanimous decision of both the captain of B-59 and the political officer. Both of them have to agree in order to arm and fire that nuclear torpedo. However, B-59 is unlike any other submarine in the Soviet fleet that's in action in Cuban waters. On board is Vasily Arkhipov. Vasily Arkhipov is the flotilla commander. He's in charge of all the submarines. That gives him a vote. This now means in B-59 that Arkhipov, the captain, and the political officer all have to agree in order for that to fire. And Arkhipov says no. Arkhipov said, we have to surface. We have to contact Moscow. And an argument breaks out. Meanwhile, more depth charges are going off. But Arkhipov wins the day. He absolutely will not back down, even in the face of the political officer threatening to shoot him. They surface. They open the doors, the hatches on the submarine. The crew breathe the first fresh air they have breathed since they left Moscow a week earlier. And they unfurl proudly the red banner of the Red Navy. Arkhipov never knew how close they'd come to an actual nuclear war. And if there was any other submarine in that whole flotilla, the two would have agreed they would have gone ahead. If Arkhipov hadn't been on that submarine, and it wasn't that one that was found, we would be looking at the total vaporization of the American Atlantic Fleet. Can you just imagine what the response would be? Just think about that. Let that sink in from that sub that didn't sink. Good night.